Good evening, everybody. This is not a video about any political affiliation or party political opinions. This whole channel is about helping people move home, and my stated goal is a home for everyone. And there is no other position in government, or anywhere else for that matter, that has a greater impact on what happens in the housing market than the role or the office of the Chancellor of the Exchequer. Last night, I published a video where I shared a former colleague, the head of banking operations from Lloyds Bank, who published a post on LinkedIn explaining that Rachel Reeves made several allegations about her. That's had over 156,000 views on YouTube in 24 hours, and it's kicked up an absolute storm of protest about it. Now, I want to be really clear about something. I feel very strongly, and in fact, for anyone who's watched my channel for a long time, you'll know that from long before the election, I said Rachel Reeves was not fit for this job. Nothing to do with Labour, nothing to do with her policies, nothing to do with being a Tory, because I'm not, and I didn't vote for them in the election. Just simply, she wasn't up to the job. And this is not a criticism of her. It's not her fault, right? I do agree with the opinion that she's been over-promoted. You know, in most instances, getting over-promoted is a good thing. It's a great opportunity. But there's simply too much at stake in the housing market to have someone who's in over their head. And what I want to explain now is why I don't think she should be in the job. And even if I was a Labour supporter, a Labour MP, a Labour front bencher, I would be saying she cannot stay in that job. And straight away, before anyone asks who I would pick to replace her, having had a brief look, it would be from the existing cabinet, I would be picking Pat McFadden. I don't know much about him, but I know that he's got actual experience in the Treasury. He's been around a very long time. And he strikes me as a politician who understands the gravity of the role and the seriousness of the role. And Rachel Reeves, judging by her conduct, doesn't understand the seriousness of the role. Let me explain what I mean. I've put links in the description below to everything that I'm about to share with you. Now, just very briefly, okay, for those of you who don't want to stay around for the detail, she got into trouble for credit card expense claims at Halifax Bank of Scotland. She had her Parliamentary credit card suspended by the Independent Parliamentary Standards Association in 2015. So on two occasions, there are undisputed records of her abusing finances, even as an MP. She has changed her CV. That was confirmed by the Treasury, that she has updated her CV and amended it to reflect what really happened. And she has, in the opinion of many people, it is alleged, been dishonest about her career, in particular about whether or not she was actually ever an economist or not. And I've had people contacting me from the city who've been there a long time saying they know every single actual economist, and going back 25 years, she's never, ever even in the consideration as an economist. I've got someone who is very senior at a bank dealing with cabinet ministers going back 20 years saying absolutely never an economist. None of those things are the reason that she should resign on their own. That's not what I'm saying. Even if it turns out she did lie on her CV, even if it turns out that the credit card, all of those things, it's because the power of that office has the power to affect the standard of living of every single person in this country. And although she says that she understands it. I would say that judging by her actions, she doesn't understand it. Let me run through what I mean. So just very briefly, and again, I've links to all this below. So that's the story in the Telegraph about how she had her credit card suspended while in Parliament. Then yesterday, it was the turn of her former colleague at Lloyds Bank, who alleges that she nearly got sacked due to an expenses scandal where the three senior managers were all signing off each other's expenses. Narrow escape. Today, here's a screenshot of the change that she made on her LinkedIn profile. So it said that she was an economist at the Bank of Scotland from 2006 to 2009. That is patently not true by her own admission, because it's now been updated to say that she was in retail banking. And the chap from Lloyd says that she was in the complaints department of Halifax Retail Banking from 2006 to 2009. Today, we see a post on Rachel Reeves' own timeline on X, where she posts an article she did for Stylist magazine about her time as an economist at the Bank of England. All right. And in that article, she says, if you want the link to this below to go have a look, I spent a decade working as an economist at the Bank of England and loved it. But on Rachel Reeves' own LinkedIn profile, which is right here, a decade? No. She was there for, by her own LinkedIn profile, 6 years, right? Not a decade. And some people are like, oh, Charlie, this isn't serious. But my point is, it's about how seriously she takes the position of this office, because she's in charge of all of our livelihoods and futures. And she needs to demonstrate how precise she can be. And this doesn't do that. Now, the Fraud Act, this is the Crown Prosecution Service's website. And on the Fraud Act 2006, it clearly states fraud by false representation. Where are we? Here we are. The offences. Section 1 creates a general offence of fraud and introduces 3 ways of committing it. And the first one is fraud by a false representation, where the defendant's conduct must be dishonest and his or her intention must be to make gain. No gain or loss needs actually to have been made, and it's maximum sentence up to 10 years in prison. Now, I'm not saying that she did or she didn't. I'm saying that there are allegations that she has, and I'm saying that if she was to stay in the role, and if she was to dig her heels in and say, I want to stay in the role, then actually this should be tried by a court to see whether or not the evidence is that she did commit fraud by misrepresentation or not. I don't know, but I would love to know what a court would find based on the evidence that people could put together. If you are watching this as someone who is wondering why it's so expensive to own a home, it's out of your reach to buy a home, it's out of your reach to rent a home, or the home you're renting is eye-wateringly expensive and too small, or why you can't afford a home big enough to bring up a family in, or why, no matter, even though your pay rise has been going up, it seems like you've got less and less and less in your pay packet. The answer to all of those things is because of financial policies, because of the policies made by chancellors of the exchequers, people in Rachel Reeves' position. That office, and by the way, I'm not going to defend Rishi Sunak or Jeremy Hunt either, because I don't even agree with some of the stuff that they did, and they made mistakes. But And this is not about policy disagreements either. And it's not about the fact that I think the latest policies and the budget policies are actually going to drive the economy into the ground. That is a separate point, a totally separate point. This is simply that she is an embarrassment to that office, and her conduct, which has been like cheeky, let me see if I can bend the rules a bit on my credit card, bend the rules a bit on my CV, blag my way into the top job. I mean, who selected her? I mean, I assume it's Keir Starmer selected her. What were they thinking? I mean, I've asked myself this question seriously, and what I think is that actually the people pulling the strategy strings behind the scenes are going, look, the economy is going to be an absolute hot mess to start with. We've got to get some horrifically unpleasant policies put in. Let's get someone that we can throw under the bus to begin with. Now, if that's what's happening, I have no idea if it is or not, that would make sense. That would make everything make sense. It would make sense that they've picked someone that they must know about how shaky her CV and background is. They must know, right? This was all in the public beforehand. You wouldn't pick someone with that much of a shaky reputation and put them in at number 11 Downing Street unless it was to your benefit that they were doing that. Are there people who've got another agenda behind the scenes that are just waiting for her to get thrown under the bus? I've heard from several people today that after what comes out in the Sunday papers, she's toast. She's going to be thrown out of the job. I don't know if that's true or not. There is a gathering pace of momentum of people that think she should go. And again, it's nothing to do with policies. It's nothing to do with. I mean, she listen. She was elected as an MP. No problem with that. I have no problem with living and operating in a country where if the government is democratically elected that it is, then okay, you get on and make the best of it as you can with that government in place. But she needs to go very, very soon because all of our futures and our prosperity and our retirement and our pensions are in the hands of someone who, in my opinion, has a bit of a haphazard and reckless approach to her career. And for anyone who, like me, has been employing people for over 30 years in 3 different continents on the world and has seen the good and the bad and what can go wrong, you understand what I mean. When you've got someone who's out of their depth in a role with that much responsibility, it's not her that's going to suffer. It's the people who are going to suffer. It's we, the voters, the electorate, and the citizens are going to suffer. And not because she lied on her CV, and not because she has twice been caught out abusing credit cards, and not because she exaggerated in that article saying she's been as an economist at the Bank of England for 10 years when it was only 6 and wasn't actually an economist. It's simply because she's out of her depth, doesn't understand the responsibility that's placed on her desk or on her shoulders, and is going to let us all down very badly. I've had over 1,000 new subscribers to this channel, this YouTube channel, in 24 hours on the back of last night's video. And what that tells me is I've had more views on that video than I normally get in the whole channel in a whole month. What that tells me is that there are a lot of very frustrated, very angry people. Not even my existing subscribers, just completely random new members of the public. And there's been a sort of conspicuous by its absence amount of reporting in the major publications. It has crept up on the Daily Mail. It's now come on the Daily Express. The Daily Telegraph have reported it. GB News is reporting it. I don't know if it's going to make it into the Sunday Times or not. I hope it does. I really hope it does, because editors and journalists should be looking at the reaction. And by the way, my post about this on X has had, and again, this is just in 24 hours, 290,000 views. That's in addition to the 160,000 views that video had last night. Who do we have in the live chat? Everything that's wrong in the housing market, all the reasons why housing is so unaffordable are due to chancellors. And that's just my interest from the point of view of a housing market commentator and campaigner. And again, this is not a Labour versus Tory versus anyone else. This is not a party political observation at all. I'm just looking through the live chat comments here. Yeah, it is, depending on the severity, it is a criminal offence to lie on your CV. But it doesn't matter whether that would be the case in this case or not. It's simply that I think most people agree. I did a couple of surveys actually. I did one on YouTube and one on X. Over 90% agree that this is not acceptable conduct from someone in a position of office like that. She needs to go. It's an insult to everybody, especially everyone who's struggling. Yeah, I mean, there are people saying yes, she's got I think it was the LSE that she got her degree from, but there are tens of thousands of people with degrees from the London School of Economics that does not qualify them. It doesn't mean that they are of sufficient character and experience to shoulder the responsibility of that office. I don't care how she leaves, whether she's sacked, whether she resigned, whether she's charged, whether someone brings a private prosecution against her for fraudulent misrepresentation. Guys, having a master's degree isn't that impressive anymore. I know hundreds of people with master's degrees. They are wonderful people. None of them would be up for the job of the chancellor. It's and that's nothing against them. That is a massive responsibility. That's all I really wanted to say. And yes, it's a very good point. People go, well, hang on, who does she get replaced by? And I don't even know what Pat McFadden's politics are, but I do know that he is a man from the Labour cabinet who's got a more credible background, that hasn't done anything to demonstrate such poor judgment, has had experience working in the Treasury as under Gordon Brown, and therefore would at least carry, unless there are other things I don't know about him, the basic level of professional respect I would be prepared to give a guy in that job, no matter whether I disagree with his policies, just because he's actually up to the job. Yeah. So there are people here saying it needs proper investigation. I mean, if she just resigns quickly, I don't really care, as long as she's not in the job. I think that it should get properly investigated actually as well, but that's not the top priority. The second priority should be to make an example of what you do. The trouble is, and the reason that I don't think they will sack her, is because Keir Starmer would then have to explain his reason for appointing her. And it would implicate him as being as bad as her for putting her in the job. I mean, I think actually that's a worry for him, whether she resigns or whether she's sacked. I will be astounded if she stays in the job much longer. I mean, the markets. Okay, someone's saying, please briefly explain what's happened the last day. Rachel Reeves, a director of banking operations at Lloyds Bank, posted an allegation on LinkedIn about Rachel Reeves that seems to confirm that she lied on her CV. And lying on your CV is an offence under the Fraud Act 2006. And depending on the circumstances, it can be a criminal offence. And the magistrate's court, where the offence is initially reported, will decide whether or not it should be tried in a Crown Court as a criminal offence, or whether they try it in a magistrate's court as a civil offence. And anyone, any individual, any private individual can bring a case if they've got the evidence against her. Yeah, Martin Hamilton makes a very good point. It's very worrying when the Chancellor of the Exchequer, by her own admission, doesn't know the difference between 10, a decade, and 6 years, which is actual. She's fueled by vanity, I would say. I agree with that. I don't know her. I'm genuinely deeply worried for a lot of people that she is in that job. Yeah. Is she going to get... yeah, I mean, Carlos says surely Starmer should go too. I think terrible judgment. This has the potential. I don't think it's likely. I think there are too many powerful people behind the scenes who want this government to stay in power for longer. That's what I think. Yeah, a new budget too, says Alistair. Craig Wood, I showed it on screen. I showed it. It's her own. This, as I'm showing you right here, this is her own. So this is just for people who are watching live who missed the start. This is her own LinkedIn page, right, where she has completely changed that part of it. All right, she's changed it, and this is what it said before. It said Bank of Scotland economist, and then not only did she change the job title, but she even changed which bank it was. I mean, Halifax was part of Bank of Scotland, but a Bank of Scotland economist looks better on your LinkedIn page than a Halifax retail banking person does. But someone who was above her at Lloyd's made allegations about her. I've missed something really important here as well. Not only was she done for an expense scandal and nearly got fired for it at Halifax, but she was also lying about dentist and doctor's appointments so that she could go off and work in the Labour Council and campaign for the Labour Party. She lied to get time off work to go political campaigning. And again, this is relevant if you're someone who's now the Chancellor of the Exchequer. That's what I think. Yeah. Lee Tronick says she had a parliamentary credit card removed a few years ago due to her abusing it, and now she manages the nation's budget. Unbelievable. It is. She's not fit for the job. Darren Elkin says, I'm going to put PM on my CV. No, I know. I'm sorry. A LinkedIn page isn't necessarily a CV. The point is whether or not it counts as misleading, because it could be argued. I mean, look, it's experience, right? And so it's lying about your work experience. There's no legal definition of a curriculum vitae versus work experience. Craig Wood, you aren't up for Chancellor of the Exchequer, so it doesn't fucking matter what you do on your CV, does it? This is the point. It's because of the office she holds that this is important. Yeah. Anyway, guys, I just wanted to... Jesus, it's 10 past midnight. Why are there 640 of you watching this right now? There's not much more I wanted to say on that. That's it. If you've joined late, starting again from the beginning, the first 5 minutes will cover the details of what I've said. But I am very much hoping that the Sunday papers might come up with something that might lead to this actually getting dealt with. What I really, really hope is it doesn't just get swept under the carpet. I'm looking at the Sunday Times' front page. Nothing on there about this. World comment. Musk and Reeves have the same point to prove. No. So they're talking about other things and not talking about this at all. Barclays boss gives Reeves vote of confidence on city reform. Oh my God. So there we are. The Times is clearly not going to throw Rachel Reeves under the bus. This is from the Sunday Times. There we go. There you are, guys. I think unless we, as citizens, make a big enough stink about this, it's not going to go away. We've got to make a big enough stink that the papers pick it up. Otherwise, it's not going to go away. I thought about starting a petition, like a parliamentary petition, to get the question asked in Parliament. 100,000 signatures, and it gets discussed in Parliament. I wonder whether starting a petition would actually get that. Would you all guys, what do you reckon? Start a petition on this and just try and get it spread on social media to get the question asked in Parliament about whether or not Rachel Reeves is fit for office, given whether or not she should be clarifying her work experience and whether it influenced her position and whether or not she committed fraud. Okay, Darren Smith, thank you. Yeah. Oh, Ed says petitions are dead. Okay, well, so there's nothing we can do then. Of course, there's such a thing as retail banking in a bank. Who said that? Of course, there's such a thing as retail banking in a bank. There's commercial banking, there's retail banking, there's investment banking. Of course, there's such a thing as retail banking in a bank. There is. Okay. Cool Dude 1995 asks, did you put a petition on the Conservatives with the PPE scandal? The PPE scandal absolutely should be properly inquired about, and heads should roll for that. But it wasn't something that threatened the entire country's finances. It was common and garden corruption and absolutely should be called out and dealt with. But it's not on the same planet of seriousness as this. All right, I'll take this question. Craig Wood says, can we have a look at my CV, see how qualified you really are on housing? My CV is on LinkedIn for anyone who wants to go and see it. But I will answer that question. I studied politics. I then went into the city. I qualified as I was what was then the FCA, was then the SFA, qualified authorized representative of that. I traded derivatives, financial and commodity derivatives, futures and options in all markets, equities, gilts, soft commodities, foreign exchange, everything. Since then, I've run businesses working for myself, and for the last 25 years, I've been providing software systems to estate agents, large and small, including brands countrywide and some of the biggest ones. So in terms of the housing market, yes, I do have arguably a unique CV in terms of understanding the dynamics of the housing market. When you combine my 25 years of providing technology systems to the estate agency industry with my politics education and my background in the city, yeah, I think I've got a fairly unique, not saying it's the best, I'm just saying it's a fairly unique sort of qualification on housing. I've worked with councils on homelessness, and I continue to try and do so. So there you are, Craig. Are you defending Rachel Reeves, by the way, Craig? Is that the point of this? David says, did this so-called oversight on her CV enable her to become Shadow Chancellor? That's the question that needs to be answered, David. That is the question that needs to be answered. It's exactly that. Anyone else want to challenge me? Because this isn't about me. It's about Rachel Reeves. Honestly, I don't give a fuck what you want to ask about me. Ask away. I don't care, because this is just about Rachel Reeves being not fit for the purpose of the job that she's got, which is all of our futures at stake. All of our futures at stake. Deadly 0101 says, don't worry, the Bank of England will remove her. Interesting. I get what you're saying there. Interesting to see if they will pull the levers they can. Off My Cloud says, if she has openly lied by stating that she's an economist when she isn't and never has been, then I think any member of her constituency who voted for her could argue that they did so on the basis. I'm now going to share with you a private message. I won't show you. You won't see who it's from. I'm going to share with you a private message. I've got to just double check there's nothing in there that reveals who they are. Okay, it doesn't. So here we go. Let's see how this goes. So this is a private message from someone on Twitter who has been following me on Twitter and communicating with me for a very long time on Twitter, and they've got a long history in this city. I worked with most of the stress heads and economists throughout 2000 to 2020 within the city, Wall Street and Bank of England. When I read Rachel Reeves was an economist, I'd never heard of her, neither had any of my colleagues. The fact is, you'd never get a city economist who would work within the Labour system. It's a pretty small community, around 100 people. Frankly, discussed the media, I'm not making more of this. And he goes on to say, also, there is no way you go from a junior economist role at Bank of England to a customer support manager. Being an economist has a defined career trajectory. I'd suggest that someone at the BOE is covering for her too. Needs a freedom of information request, she's a fraud. Also, if you've been resigned for dishonesty in the city, then the chances of getting another role is already limited. I had 30 years there. Unless, of course, you lied again and dodged a screening bullet. Moreover, to become an economist, you need a pure economics degree, not a PPE nonsense degree. I'd be questioning her entire career. It's a common debate within my groups. How can the most powerful roles in the country require almost zero relevant qualification or experience? And that's from someone who has worked with, as a senior, very, very famous global bank, has worked directly with cabinet ministers. That's their view. Yeah, Winston Fahrenheit makes a good point. If she had just been up front, that'd have been good enough. The current Bank of England governor with his PhD was on some medieval agricultural historical crap. Yeah. Yeah, maybe she can wriggle out of it. Change is coming, says, as the definition of economist isn't a legally protected title, I doubt there's a case, as she'll say, she did data analysis in retail banking. This is why I think it should go to court, because a court can then find out. Yeah. Howard Forland, I said exactly this. I've actually got that page up on the Fraud Act, Section 2 of Fraud Act, fraud by false representation. Mike Dennington says she is the fall guy for Starmer. Could be. Could well be. Right, guys. Thank you very much. Thanks for watching. I'm just going to go back to this. It is my opinion and my hope that Rachel Reeves chooses to do the only honourable thing left and fall on her sword and resign before she's asked to, before she's pressured to. And I hope that she doesn't do that really awkward, embarrassing thing that all MPs do for some reason, which is when they're initially asked to resign, they say, no, I'm not going to resign. 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 And then 3 days later, they resign. Just resign. As soon as people come to you with a real reason to resign, you should just resign. Guys, have a great Saturday night and rest of your weekend. And let's see what happens on Monday. Thanks, guys. See you soon. Bye bye. And welcome to all my new subscribers. Bye bye.